You are listening to Fantasy Filmball with Matt and Dylan, and on this show, we turn movies into sports and look at all the Oscar prospects and their fantasy value.
I believe that this is going to win Best Picture, and here's why.
I mean, Denis Villeneuve got all the nominations he needed for Dune and still missed out on the Best Director slot.
Don't let me get my hopes up. The Academy has disappointed me too many times.
Thank you to the Academy. Thank you to all of you in this room.
I can't remember the last time I walked out of a movie theater on such a high.
No matter how certain it seems, anything can happen on nominations morning.
Never count the Golden Globes for just doing something off the walls and bonkers.
It's the kind of movie that reminds me of why I fell in love with movies.
And the Oscar goes to...
Welcome into episode 5 of Fantasy Filmball. My name's Dyl.
And my name's Matt, and this is a show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something that we do not talk about here. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about Thor, Love and Thunder, plus Next Goal Wins and Oscar follow-up movies. But before we begin and get into all of that, we want to talk about a little question, which is, what do you think the best Oscar win of all time is? Dyl, why don't you start? What's the best Oscar win of all time?
When I saw this question, I thought it was just a great one because there's so many just amazing Oscar wins, but naturally, it's my personal opinion is going to be something that came out since the time I've been following the Oscars, and the supporting actor race always seems to be like my favorite acting race of the year. So my two would be Christoph Waltz for Inglourious Basterds and Mahershala Ali for Moonlight, just because Inglourious Basterds is arguably one of my favorite movies of all time, and Christoph Waltz is the highlight of that movie to me. And then Mahershala Ali and Moonlight was just such a monumental win, and also just the win that really set that movie on fire for the awards season race.
Right. No, those are really great choices. Mahershala Ali especially. Can you believe that he's never had a lead role until last year? I
could not believe that myself, and that's one of the reasons why I kept predicting him to get nominated last year. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I mean, I love Mahershala Ali. I'll watch anything that he's in, even if it's not good. Shout out to Alita Battle Angel, but I really hope that he continues to get more leading roles after Swan Song last year and can continue to make that push to get his third Oscar nomination.
Be careful, Dill. You're going to get the Alita army against us. They're going to bomb our show and take it down. Do not upset the Alita Battle Angel army. Okay.
I saw the movie in IMAX, so I gave it my money, so
I did too. That was a fun movie to see in IMAX. It's not great. It's fun. It's very fun.
Yes.
Good choices. Honestly, I feel the same as you, where I'm like, is it weird that I'm doing so many really recent picks here? But for me, when I think of Oscar wins that just feel so deserved and so exciting, I think of Olivia Colman in The Favorite. That's the one for me where 2018's Oscars ceremony, that was a disappointing night for many reasons. You know, I had a group of friends over and we were all huge Roma fans, and so it sucked to see it lose to Green Book. But the absolute opposite reaction to our disappointment when Green Book won Best Picture was how I felt when Olivia Colman won. You know, that whole season, I was just hoping she could do it, that she would get there, and then she did, and it was amazing and so deserved. And the other one that I want to mention, I mean, besides Parasite, which is also an incredibly deserving one, is Anthony Hopkins for the Father. Mostly just because, you know, he, despite not being much of an underdog, there was the entire season long the whole narrative of Chadwick Boseman has to win, Chadwick Boseman has to win, Chadwick Boseman has to win. And he was good, but Anthony Hopkins really did deliver one of the best performances that I think I've ever seen. So it was really nice to me to have that affirmation that given a great narrative with a good performance or a great performance with no narrative, they're still going to go for the great performance. That felt like very solidifying for me, that I'm like, okay, I can kind of trust the Oscars, that they might do the right thing sometimes. So those two would be my favorite two wins of all time. I don't know. What did you think of those two? How did you react when Coleman won?
Well, The Favorite was my favorite movie of that year, so any wins it got, I was all for, because I knew it was not going to win the ones that I thought it should, like picture or screenplay. But so I was head over heels when Olivia Colman won, because I liked Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born. I thought she was great. Glenn Close, I didn't really see her case for winning besides like she's overdue, but like Olivia Colman was the force in that category. Like personally, Emma Stone was my favorite actress in that movie, but I'm glad that at least one of them could have been recognized on the biggest stage of all. And Anthony Hopkins is just an amazing actor. The Father is one of my favorite movies from that year, and his performance is arguably my favorite quote quote acting performance of like this whole recent Oscar seasons, because like the Waltz one was over 10 years ago. Ali was from like right before I got in. So ever since I've been like intensely following, I would say Anthony Hopkins has been my favorite performance that has won an award.
For sure. Anthony Hopkins was such a great award. But talking about actors and acting, we should talk about a movie that has a ton of actors in it, a lot of acting, just a lot of ensemble cast, and that is Amsterdam, because we're going to get right into the news today. And Amsterdam released the first trailer, which Amsterdam, of course, is David O. Russell's new film, and it's starring a cast of, I can't even remember. Help me out, Dyl. Who's in the movie?
So I know we have Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Chris Rock, Anya Taylor-Joy, Rami Malek, Robert De Niro, Taylor Swift. I'm sure there's more.
I feel like there's
Everyone's
more.
in this.
Yeah, everyone's in it. If they're not in Babylon, they're in this, or they're in both.
Yes. And I don't know. I think this movie has the potential to do something, but also has the potential to do nothing. And I'm sure that's something that we'll get into more detail on a later episode. But I know I feel different than you. I thought this trailer was actually quite amusing on the second watch. The first watch, I really wasn't into it. But when I saw Thor earlier today, this trailer played before it. And I know my theater loved this trailer. And then personally, I thought the trailer was also pretty enjoyable seeing it for like the second time, because the first time you're like, wait, what voice is Christian Bale doing, and what's really the point of this? And I still don't really get what the whole, I guess, gist of the movie is going to be, but I was more on board with the tone the second time around.
I think the reason I'm not on board with the tone is it doesn't feel like they're really going for the tone. Mm-hmm. To me, it just feels like everyone is bored by this movie, which is wild, because this is an insane cast. It feels right now, I might be wrong because this is just a trailer, but it feels like everyone's sleepwalking through the movie. Unless David O. Russell delivers an undeniable masterpiece, there's no way he gets past his allegations. I think that honestly, this movie is going to hurt every single person who's in it, because they will be known as having worked with David O. Russell this year. Mm-hmm. So could Margot Robbie win Best Actress this year for Babylon? Totally. Is it going to hurt her chances a little bit that she just worked with David O. Russell on this movie? I think so. We'll talk about that more probably in future weeks, but first impression, I'm not impressed by Amsterdam's trailer. It didn't change my mind about it.
Well, and I guess more positive news for both of us. You just talked about your love of Parasite winning Best Picture. We got some news about Bong Joon-ho's next movie. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Of course. I mean, I'm really excited for Bong Joon-ho's next movie. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was announced this week that Steven Yeun and Robert Pattinson are going to be in the movie, which is a great combo. Steven Yeun's worked with Bong Joon-ho before on Okja. Okja is so underrated. Have you seen Okja?
I have. I watched it during like the quarantine session of 2020, because like I just came off watching Parasite, loved it. I was like, he's got some movies on Netflix. I should give them a try. I have mixed thoughts on Okja. I think it's good. I really love what Jake Gyllenhaal is doing in that movie. Yeah. I just wish the rest of the movie maybe matched his tone a little bit more, but I still thought it was a very enjoyable watch.
Bong Joon-ho, always someone to be excited for, but that's not coming this year. That's coming in a later year. And speaking of movies coming in a later year, we have official confirmation that Next Goal Wins has been pushed back. We're still going to be talking about Next Goal Wins today, because it kind of leads into a really great topic otherwise, but to me, I don't know about to you, Dylan, but to me, Next Goal Wins being pushed from 2020 to 2021 to 2022, now back to 2023, says to me that this is not an awards movie. They're going to put this on Hulu. It's just going to be a summer comedy that they just dump on the streaming service. But how do you feel about it?
I would slightly disagree with that, because I feel like if they're just going to dump it to Hulu, it would already be going to Hulu. I know there's been some discussion of if it's actually done or not. But I feel like if it was going to be a Hulu movie, they would have like either said here or on this delay, like it's being delayed to come out next year during the summer or this Christmas, because I feel like this also could be a nice little Christmas time movie because it is a feel good movie. But I feel like there's still a small chance this could have some sort of awards push. But I do agree with you. I don't think this bodes very well for the movie because, like you said, it's been it's going to be its third award season having a little bit of action where it just doesn't do anything. Fourth, exactly, yeah. even worse. So, I mean, I still have hope for it a little bit just because we've seen a similar title like this with Ted Lasso working very well for the Emmys, but the Emmys and Oscars aren't really the same thing, so it probably won't be a player, but there's still always a little bit of hope.
Absolutely. And in some fun, nerdy news for people who are listening to this, because you're definitely into this too, because we are, Gold Derby's odds, they're up and running. You can go and get your good odds now before movies come out and we know what's good and what's not. You can get those sweet 100-to-1 odds. So, Dyl, take us through what are some of your early picks of things that you can snag now at great odds?
Well, from people who've been listening to the show all year, you know that I'm Team Avatar, and Avatar is 100-to-1 odds in both picture and director, so those are absolute must pickups from me. Then if we go into some of the acting categories, I mean, you can get Hugh Jackman and Coleman Domingo for 48 and 62-to-1 odds respectively. Then when you go to supporting actresses where stuff gets crazy, of my projected 5, 4 of them are at 100-to-1 odds with Lily Gladstone, Whoopi Goldberg, Sadie Sink, and Laura Dern. And then going into the most recently updated screenplay categories, you can get 13 Lives, a movie that I know that we're both pretty high on at the moment at 100-to-1 odds.
I want to do better on Gold Derby this year. I did horribly last year. I'm going to do well this year. I believe in me too. I believe in, for what it's worth, I believe in you too. So,
thank you. And I know, talking about snagging odds early, a movie I kind of did not take right away, but I eventually picked up later in the season was JoJo Rabbit, all the way back in 2019. And our main topic on the show this week is Taika Waititi's follow-up, Thor: Love and Thunder, which I know has had a lot of discourse in the last few days. So just first thoughts on the movie, Matt. What did you think?
I wish I liked it. I wish I liked it. Okay. Before we talk about this, I want to talk about what I think about Taika Waititi, because I love Taika Waititi. For me, What We Do in the Shadows was the hardest I've laughed at a movie maybe ever. It's totally up there with, the funniest movies I've ever seen in theaters. But Jojo Rabbit was a movie that I followed for so long. I read the script beforehand because I heard what it was about, and I got my hands on the script and I thought, this sounds absolutely insane. I need to read this right now. And I got to see it at the world premiere at TIFF, which was an incredible experience. And something I'll tell you about the Jojo Rabbit TIFF premiere, the room, the energy in that room was electric. If you were there, you would know instantly, this is winning the People's Choice Award. This is getting nominated for Best Picture. And then I woke up the next day to horrible reviews of the movie from every critic that I followed. And there was such a disconnect. And so while people on the internet were saying, Jojo Rabbit's getting bad reviews, there's no way it wins the People's Choice Award, there's no way it wins Best Picture, if you were at TIFF, you would know this is winning People's Choice Award. If you were at that screening, you would know instantly there's nothing else that could win this. But what do you think about Taika Waititi? What's your take on the guy?
So I also saw Jojo Rabbit at a film festival. I saw it at the Virginia Film Festival, and it was a day where I did multiple movies at a time, which probably wasn't the best idea because I just had finished seeing Marriage Story, which I think is
oh my god,
head
dude!
over heels.
I saw Marriage Story right before Jojo Rabbit too.
Nice. So we got the same thing here. I thought Marriage Story was head over heels better, and at that time, Marriage Story was my favorite movie of the year at that moment. So then having JoJo be the first movie I watched after it kind of had me not loving it at first. I was also very tired. It was like at 8 p.m., so I dozed off a little bit, which will be a trend because I did that with Thor: Love and Thunder as well. But on multiple rewatches, I've really grown to love Jojo Rabbit. I really love the character work. The comedy really works for me. The pacing works a lot better. On that first viewing, the pacing really didn't work for me in the first act, but on subsequent watches, I've liked it a lot more. I love Ragnarok, the previous Thor entry that Waititi did, and then I'm a little mixed on him as an actor. Like I've mentioned before on the show, I thought he was the worst part of Lightyear, and there's been some other stuff he's popped up in, like Free Guy, where his comedy doesn't really work for me when he's acting, but his direction and his writing usually works for me, as well as his performance in Jojo Rabbit, which also worked for me as well.
Yeah, can I just say, while we're on the topic of Jojo Rabbit, Thomasin McKenzie was better than Scarlett Johansson.
I agree. And
Yeah.
I still think it's just super. It was super crazy to me that whole season why Johansson was being double nominated, because, like I said, Marriage Story was one of my favorites of that year.
Yeah.
I thought she was one of the best performances of that year as a whole. I would say she was my second or third favorite. Second favorite if you only include Oscar contenders, third if you include everyone. And then she was arguably getting more buzz for a performance I thought she was just kind of there for. Like, she wouldn't
Yeah.
even be in my 3 or 4 favorite performances in that movie.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was kind of baffled that she was going on, but I think it was just a narrative of it's her time. You know, she did a great job in Marriage Story. Let's bring her along in Jojo Rabbit, because we don't know Thomasin McKenzie as well yet. So,
Yeah.
criminal. That is so annoying. But, you know, I think that both of us were not huge fans of Thor: Love and Thunder, which is a huge shame. But I just want to say, now there's a trend of Oscar winners, now two in a row, Oscar winners whose follow-up film to their Oscar-winning film is a Marvel flop, which sucks, because I was so looking forward to Eternals, which I didn't like, and I was so looking forward to Thor: Love and Thunder, which I also did not like. And, you know, it's such a shame. But Thor Ragnarok, you mentioned that. I also thought that was great. I think that's one of the most refreshing and fun and interesting Marvel movies that there's been in a long time. So what was different here? You know, what went wrong?
So my big issue with this movie is just it's only 2 hours long, which, I mean, to some people is a good thing, to other people is a bad thing. I would say everything but the last 15 minutes of this movie feels like the first act. And nothing really happens. It's just a bunch of small things here and there eventually coming together, and then you get to the final battle, I guess you can call it, between multiple characters, and then that ends pretty abruptly, and then the movie's over. And so my biggest issue with this movie is just the pacing is very odd to me. No one in this movie really feels like they're doing anything. While I love a lot of specific moments or like characters from other movies that are here, none of them feel like they're really bringing anything to the table, and the ones that do feel like a lot is missing from what they're doing. Like, you go from one scene, and the next scene their tone or their demeanor has completely changed, where it doesn't really follow like a through line. But it'll be interesting to see what the overall consensus with this movie is going forward, because it's still going to make a good amount of money at the box office. Like, it won't be like Eternals and lose money, but so far the critical and audience reception has been pretty poor, at least for Marvel movies in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, Doctor Strange got a similar kind of reception where it was just tepid. Everyone going, it's fine. And to be clear, I don't think Thor: Love and Thunder is outright a bad movie. I just found it to be really disappointing. For me, the thing that I thought was so different from Thor Ragnarok was the storytelling. And maybe this is the pacing. Maybe they could have done more with a longer movie. I'm not one to advocate for a longer movie. I think that a short runtime is the best runtime. But in this, it felt like things were just being squashed in. And I don't know if that was a pacing thing or if it was just a motivation thing. Because to me, the storytelling was all over the place, and there was a lot of things that I was questioning the entire time. For example, the cancer arc. Early on, they keep saying that the hammer is the thing that's curing Natalie Portman's character's cancer and that she's alive because she has the hammer and it's giving her power. And then suddenly everything switches and they're like, oh, the hammer is leeching her life and she's gonna die if she keeps holding the hammer, which just felt so out of nowhere, and it didn't seem like something that was ever teased. There were sudden motivation shifts. Christian Bale's character, Gore, the God Butcher, at first I thought that they could really make a great arc with that character where he learns to hate the gods, where he goes from worshipping to resenting them for causing him so much pain. But having a sudden motivation shift where he just touches a sword and suddenly becomes corrupted and must kill the gods, it's not satisfying.
I mean, for the character to be called Gore the God Butcher, you would think you would see him butcher gods. We get one, and it's not really even him doing it. The sword just kind of appears in his hand. And that's the one thing I really wish I think could have really helped fleshed out this movie is, like you were saying, see his progression. And even if it did start off like that, because I will applaud Marvel and Taika for how they opened this movie. That's definitely not where I saw this movie opening. Very different tone, very just out there story structure for that first, I guess, pre-credit scene, I guess you could call it, because the opening titles hadn't even ran yet. But there's just a lot with a specific, like, a few characters where I'm just like, I love what they're doing, especially with Bale, with Gore, and Valkyrie's always been one of my favorite characters in the whole universe, and they just feel kind of wasted here because Tessa Thompson's a great actress, but it feels like she's just being given nothing to really say, so she just pops up because, like, it's Tessa Thompson, you need to show her, but then she's just not really doing anything besides talking to Korg and taking a few shots. And I will say the one thing I really did like about this movie, which is something I've heard a lot of people didn't like about this movie, was Russell Crowe.
I like Russell Crowe. I thought he was fun.
I don't know really what he was trying to go for, but I really liked what he did go for. And there was one clip that I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it really reminded me of a scene from Les Mis. I don't think that was intentional at all, but when it happened in my head...
You never know with Taika Waititi. You never know.
In my head, I'm like, this is the same shot in the same motion that he's doing with his body. And it's just... Les Mis is another movie I have a lot of issues with, but there's specific things I really love about that movie. And I think the same thing goes for Thor Love and Thunder. There's just a lot here I don't like, but there's some specific scenes, especially with Gore, with Thor, and with Tessa Thompson and Valkyrie, that really worked for me, but then just it all gets derailed because it's like you said, we spent 5 minutes here, we're done, next scene, let's go. Mm-hmm. And a lot of stuff being rushed and a lot of stuff just not feeling natural. But there's one comment you made earlier I just wanted to put my, I guess, guess to when you're talking about the hammer with Natalie Portman's character. And my guess would be it's the same way that the sword kind of took over Gore and Christian Bale, and like draining the life out of him was probably, I guess, the allegory for her as well, that these weapons are used to like amplify you as a person, but also are like tearing you apart. But that's also just a complete guess because they didn't really explain that at all. That's just like
I get that, but
whatever.
Early on in the movie, what they say, because Thor takes the hammer and he whispers to it, and he's like, I want you to always protect her. I want you to always protect her. And so when the hammer calls to her and she gets it, what I got out of that is, oh, as long as she has the hammer, she's going to be able to live. Because it's not that it's, like, keeping her alive because it's got that energy, but the reason that she's worthy and the reason that this hammer's calling to her is because it's trying to keep her alive. And so for it later to be that the reason she dies is because of the hammer, I don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me. Okay, Thor Love and Thunder, I'll just say, it sounds like I really hate this movie. I don't really hate this movie. It's okay. I just thought it was going to be one of the good ones, and it's not. Anyways, go stream Miss Marvel. It's better than this.
I had said before, Marvel's going to get one visual effects nomination, and I thought it would be this one. No, I take that back. Yeah. That's off the table. I have now moved on to saying Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the possible Marvel slot because I just don't see them doing Doctor Strange after just nominating Far From Home, which was Doctor Strange visual effects. But, you know, maybe this is the year where Marvel just gets a goose egg.
I will say, I mean, in terms of what you're saying, I get what you mean by Spider-Man No Way Home, its visual effects nomination was very much for the mirror dimension that they used in that, which is very Doctor Strange. They didn't use that in Multiverse of Madness. Multiverse of Madness was very different. They had a lot of very unique visual effects, the paint dimension, a lot of very Sam Raimi stuff, some zombie effects. So if Doctor Strange is the Marvel movie to get through, it would be for entirely different reasons from why No Way Home made it through. So, but I completely agree with you. I had previously thought maybe Thor: Love and Thunder will be the Marvel movie to get in. It's not. This is the worst VFX that I've seen in any Marvel movie in a maybe ever. It looked like plastic the entire time. I don't know if you felt that way, but to me, the entire time, every single thing looked fake.
There was one scene specifically that I think Thor was talking with someone on like a hill, and you could see the background. I think it may have even been at the beginning when he's talking with Star-Lord. The background is like a sunset, but nothing's moving on the sunset. Like, it's just a standstill. Like, there's a cloud, and the cloud wasn't even moving like across the screen. And like they were standing there for like a good 2-3 minutes, and like you could clearly see every time they cut, it was like the same background sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there was one scene where Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman were walking down the bridge, and Korg and Valkyrie were just standing behind them, just like dozing off into space. Like, they're not actually there; they're just walking to like be like, "Oh, we're gonna like put y'all in together, even though y'all aren't all four actually walking here." Like,
Yeah.
We're gonna do two shots, and then we're just gonna blur the second one. And I don't know, that was just very noticeable to me. I know that's not something most people would notice, but the whole time I was just like, why is Tessa Thompson looking down, then up, then left, then right every 2 seconds?
Yeah.
And not in accordance with what anyone's saying.
I think you're really onto something. Something that's really... There's a lot of things that's bugging me with Marvel right now, but one of the things that's really bugging me is that you can tell since Spider-Man No Way Home, they've really, really embraced the idea that, hey, we can make movies without having the actors in the same place anymore. Mm-hmm. And it'll be like, no one notices. Well, we're noticing, Marvel. We notice. We notice that you are filming separate actors on green screens and pretending they're in the same space. It doesn't feel the same, and it's annoying, and it's not good. And please stop doing that, because it's bad. Also, okay, I have to stop talking about Thor, but another thing bugging me about Marvel is they keep setting up things in one movie, and then they're like, the next movie, they just don't want to deal with it. So they just figure out, how can I get rid of that situation in the first 10 minutes and move on to my own adventure. So, like, what were the purpose of the Guardians of the Galaxy here? Their purpose
Nothing.
was to show up for 10 minutes and have Taika Waititi go, how can I get the Guardians of the Galaxy out of this goddamn movie? And, you know, every single time they set something up in one movie, it really just feels like a challenge for the next director to think, how do I undo that and do what I want to do? Because I don't want to deal with that. I want to do my own thing.
Yeah, because like in all the marketing, and even like like when you go to like see like Top Gun or Everything Everywhere All at Once, like there would be ads saying like, oh, this is a Thor and Guardians of the Galaxy team-up movie. And I would say, outside of Chris Pratt, the rest of the Guardians maybe have one line of dialogue each.
And not that I want a Guardians Thor team-up movie, but Marvel has to stop setting things up if they have no plans on actually following through with it. Like, none. They have to stop.
Well, speaking of stopping, we got a interesting little thing that we've noticed over the last few years of people really predicting, and this ties in with the Gold Derby stuff too, because if you go on there, you look, you see Next Goal Wins, you see The Sun, you see Rustin, you see a lot of Poor Things. You see a lot of directors follow-up movies who aren't really from not known, but like multiple time nominated directors. Just like, oh, they're making their next movie, Greatest Movie Run Ever. Let me throw that in for picture and director and screenplay and actor. Or Poor Things, which isn't even coming out anymore. Or White Noise. Or there's a lot of them this year. And I know that this is a topic that you have a lot to say about. So I do. Hand it over to you right away.
We're here to say, listen here. Listen here, audience. Listen up. We're here to tell you, stop doing that shit. Stop it. We're here to just talk about Oscar follow-ups. You know, why do we predict them? Why do we expect big things? And why should you stop that? Stop it. Right now. Don't predict don't predict poor things. Please don't. It's not going to work out for you.
It's not even coming out this year, so it's obviously not going to work out.
Obviously, it's not going to work out for you. Bad idea. But if it was, don't predict it. So, since we're talking about Taika Waititi and we're talking about Thor: Love and Thunder, which is, of course, his follow-up film from Jojo Rabbit, we also have to talk a little bit about Next Goal Wins, which, even though Thor: Love and Thunder is his, it's his follow-up film from Jojo Rabbit, his real follow-up, because no one's thinking that a Marvel movie is going to be an Oscar follow-up. Next Goal Wins, of course, not coming out this year anymore, but it's a movie that I saw in people's predictions in 2020, in 2021, 2022, and now it's going to be in people's predictions for 2023.
Well, originally this was supposed to be the Jojo Rabbit follow-up, just like you said. So many delays that another movie that he filmed came out before this one even did. So, but one of the reasons is because Armie Hammer, who was a pretty big actor in this movie, not the lead, but like the second or third build actor on the list. I mean, for the people who don't know, he has some controversy and allegations of cannibalism, which, is not good. And this is not the only movie that has had a few issues with that. I like to tell a lot of people that would listen to me talk, the Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile franchise, they have a pretty good track record of their casting directors just casting the worst possible people at all times.
Yeah.
And Death on the Nile had multiple anti-vaxxers. You had Gal Gadot, who has said just a lot of odd things. You had Armie Hammer, who apparently bites and eats people. You've just had a lot of casting. I think I remember there was 8 people in the main cast, and 6 of them had issues. So that's pretty good casting right there. But Armie Hammer is replaced by Will Arnett. There we go.
Yeah.
And I love Will Arnett. Arrested Development, BoJack Horseman. He's got a lot of great stuff. So I'm really excited to see what he does with this role, because honestly, if I had the option, Armie Hammer, Will Arnett, controversy aside, I would pick Will Arnett. But Next Goal Wins, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, could be, I think his real selling point was that possible film award version of Ted Lasso. Just, you flip the script on itself. Instead of an American going overseas, it's an overseas coach coming to America. And I think there's still a possible shot for this movie to be very successful, especially in the screenplay category. Because, I mean, like you said, 2020, I had that as my projected screenplay winner when we did our draft. I thought this would be, especially in a weaker year, would be a tour de force, and a lot of those below-the-line categories, not below the lines, but those type of categories and the Golden Globes. But the longer we wait, the more I think this movie is just dead, besides being one of those well-talked-about movies on streaming, or if it even gets a theatrical release, which I think it could be one of those surprises like an Elvis, or what I think a Bullet Train later this summer, that will get a good domestic sum because of the great word of mouth.
Yeah, I think it still could get screenplay. If it's going to get anything, it's going to be screenplay. I think Taika Waititi will always be in contention for screenplay because he's so witty, he's so fun. But people who are predicting this for actor, for director, for picture, for everything, it might happen, but something, and this is why I want to talk about this this whole topic of Oscar follow-ups. I don't think that we can predict it that way just because Jojo Rabbit was a huge success. And it's interesting because I remember a few years ago in 2019, before Jojo Rabbit released, I'd read the script for the movie and I knew, having read the script, the Oscars are going to love this. I remember fighting with people online, fighting with people who were like, the Oscars would never go for a Taika Waititi movie. They would never nominate a movie about a boy with Hitler as his imaginary friend. They would never do that. And then they did, right? And now the fight is Taika Waititi might not make another Oscar movie. He might not make another movie that's like Jojo Rabbit, that's going to latch on to people. I would argue that Jojo Rabbit, the reason it made it through is because of the more serious themes of the movie, right? It didn't get through as the heartwarming movie. It made it through as a very sad movie that had a heart and had this lovely energy to it. And I don't know if a lighthearted sports movie would do the same thing. But Next Goal Wins, it's not coming this year. So what are some of the other films that fit this category? Films from directors who have never made an Oscar movie before. They did once, and now everyone's saying, could that be an Oscar nominee? And the answer, I'm going to say maybe, maybe not. So here are 4 films that are they're pretty big names. I see a lot of people throwing these around as potential Best Picture nominees. Sometimes I've seen people say they could even win. So at first, we've got Noah Baumbach, who just made Marriage Story with White Noise coming out this year. Now, Noah Baumbach, I mean, you mentioned you love Marriage Story, right, Dyl?
Mm-hmm.
But Noah Baumbach has never made an Oscar movie before Marriage Story. And I remember when Marriage Story was coming out, I saw Untitled Noah Baumbach Project in people's early predictions, and I thought to myself, no way a Noah Baumbach movie is going to get through. And White Noise, you know, he's made, 20 movies in the past that haven't been Oscar movies? He made one that was. I don't know if he's going to do it again. Florian Zeller, that's another name. I mean, of course, he only made one movie, which is The Father, which made it through, got a Best Picture nomination. Does that mean automatically that The Son is going to make it through? It could. But, you know, he has had one movie so far, and it's not like every Florian Zeller movie ever is going to get nominated. So could The Son get nominated? Totally. Could it not? Absolutely as well. We also have an upcoming Martin McDonagh movie, the director of 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. This is another director who had never made Oscar movies up until making 3 Billboards. He'd made In Bruges, which did get a screenplay nomination, and he'd made 7 Psychopaths. And now he's got The Banshee of Inisherin, which, could it be a big contender? Totally. I'm not going to rule it out. But am I going to predict it because he made 3 Billboards? No, because his track record before that is less than Oscar-friendly. And finally, Peter Farrelly with The Greatest Beer Run Ever. Yeah, he made Green Book. Yeah, he broke through as an Oscar favorite, but I caution people who are thinking that this could be a huge contender because Peter Farrelly has never made contenders until Green Book, and I don't know if a lighthearted war movie is going to do the same thing that Green Book did a few years ago. I don't know. What's your take on some of those movies, Dylan?
Well, first off, I would love to hear them announce and the Best Picture goes to The Greatest Beer Run Ever. I think that would just be hilarious to hear, just for the title alone. Just that title, at least to me, does not shout Oscar contender, especially coming from the guy who made Dumb and Dumber. But, you know, he did win for Green Book, so anything is possible. But The Son is the one of these 4 that I think actually is a contender. I don't have White Noise on any of my 10, 25 list, or 10 for all the categories, 25 for picture. Beer Run I have in a few just because Apple is producing it and campaigning it, and just if Killers doesn't actually come out, I think that becomes their new main push. Mm-hmm. So I think that still has a sort of shot, but it's not in my top 10 or anything like that. And Banshee of Inisherin is just, it's a weird one to me because, as we've mentioned multiple times on the show, Fox Searchlight doesn't have a lot this year, but they kind of do. Everything they have keeps getting delayed or pushed, and the stuff they do have fits into this category if you're talking about from a former person who's gotten multiple times or just one time here with Martin McDonagh. And then, like I said, Florian Zeller is the one that I had the most faith in because he arguably had the number 2 in picture last time. He was probably number 6 in director. He's adapting another one of his own plays, so it's not like he's coming with someone else's content or whatnot. And he is 1 for 1, and 1 for 1 is better than 1 for 15 or 1 for 5 or 1 for 10. And so my favorite is with that, and because that's also Sony Pictures' main push this year. So to me, that is the one, but I can see the case for one of the other 3. But like you said, they're not all in there.
I think you're right. The Sun also has been tested. That's the one thing I will say. And something we'll get into later is, so if we can't count on directors to say, how do we choose a movie for our Best Picture lineup, what do we count on? And something I would say is The Sun does have the best case of any of these because the play exists. People have seen the play. People know that the play is good. It's arguably, I've heard, as good as The Father. It doesn't have the same kind of gimmick of letting you into the character's mind, but I've heard that the show is just as good as The Father. So, could it make it in? Totally. But can we depend on it because the father did?
No.
No, because past success does not indicate a guarantee of future success. And we've seen that fail over and over again. So before we go into some other stuff, I want to talk about some of the failures of the past, because we've seen this over and over, that people predict big things for movies from directors who just did big things. And then we get things like First Man for Damien Chazelle. Damien Chazelle had Whiplash, then he had La La Land. He's on a hot streak. How can he lose, right? La La Land almost won Best Picture. What's going to win Best Picture in 2018? First Man? No. Didn't even sniff a nomination. And similarly, we also in 2018 had Barry Jenkins' follow-up to Moonlight. And, you have that juggernaut of Best Picture. And then it's got a follow-up movie. That's going to get into Best Picture, right? No. If Beale Street Could Talk did not get into Best Picture, very sadly, totally should have. I still maintain The First Man, Beale Street Could Talk should have gotten in. Another 2018 one that is worth mentioning is Steve McQueen, who won Best Picture for 12 Years a Slave. He made Widows that year, and it just vanished without a trace. Otherwise, we've got Chloe Zhao with Eternals, which, despite being a Marvel movie, I know we said that Thor, Love and Thunder, no one thought that that could be a huge success, but people last year did think that Eternals could break through to Best Picture because, here's this beloved Chloe Zhao who just made Nomadland, got all the Oscars, all the awards, and she's making a sci-fi action movie that's apparently a serious turn for Marvel. Could that make it into Best Picture? Flopped. We've got Luca Guadagnino, who made Call Me By Your Name. He'd never made an Oscar movie before. And then he made Call Me By Your Name, and what came out next? Suspiria. Did that get in? No. And he's got Bones and All coming out this year, and I would also say stay away from that one, too. Because...
Well, cannibals, we're back.
More
Full
cannibals.
circle.
Yeah,
exactly.
He worked with Armie Hammer, and now he's making a cannibal movie.
Maybe he learned
suspicious.
something. He may know
little
something.
Suspicious. He may know something. And, even something that I will say, because the next few that I'm going to mention, these people have had on and off success with the Oscars. So Denis Villeneuve, he made Arrival, got nominated for Best Picture in 2016, and people were looking the next year at Blade Runner 2049. Could that make it into Best Picture? And it didn't. Of course, he redeemed himself with Dune, but something that I will say is no director is going to have every single movie make it into Best Picture. So, even when we're looking at the Spielberg project, the Scorsese project, the David O. Russell project, which isn't making it into Best Picture, you have to be cautious because not every film that people make is going to be a Best Picture hit. Likewise, Jordan Peele, he made Get Out as his first film. And after that, people were saying whatever he makes next, that's going to be a big Oscar player. Was Us a big Oscar player? No.
Nope.
And we've got Nope coming out soon. And is that going to be a big Oscar player?
Nope.
Nope. It's not. And it, they still could have success in the future. But something that I see a lot in online predicting communities is people going all in on whatever last year looked like. They are going to choose those movies of whoever's doing them this year. It's the same thing for performances. Frances McDormand, she won an Oscar a few years ago for Nomadland, so she must be in the conversation for Tragedy of Macbeth. She must be in the conversation for Women Talking. Sometimes it's a one-off thing,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a last time for everything. So when it comes down to it, I think that the interesting thing to look at is that the movies that at this point in the season, if you said this is going to get nominated for Best Picture, if people are out there saying, no way, there's never been anything like that nominated before, they're not going to go for that. That's a great indication that they are probably going to go for that. That's why I feel confident in Everything Everywhere All at Once, because it's something that if you say it's getting nominated online, people are going to go, no way. But in 5 years, whatever Daniels makes next, people are going to be like, oh, that's in. And it's not going to be, because it's not going to be Everything Everywhere All at Once. And here's the thing as well. There's times when this pans out, but I'm going to say it's pretty rare that someone's next movie, after having one big breakthrough, comes through. But some successful follow-ups. We've got Guillermo del Toro, right? Because he made The Shape of Water. He'd never made a huge Oscar movie before. Pan's Labyrinth won a bunch of awards, but he'd never made a Best Picture movie before, Shape of Water. So Nightmare Alley, that's his first film after winning Best Picture. And yeah, it made it into Best Picture. That's nuts. That's something that I never thought would have happened. But he did it. Adam McKay. Adam McKay had The Big Short. He'd made comedies constantly that had never scratched the Academy Awards. And then suddenly he has 3 Best Picture nominees in a row. Greta Gerwig, she did Lady Bird. Could she follow it up? She did. She made Little Women. But she's making Barbie next, and I already see people predicting
Best
Barbie.
Picture 2023.
I already see people predicting Barbie for Best Picture, and it's not going to make Best Picture unless it does, and that'd be awesome.
Can we get a Ryan Gosling for supporting actor train started up for Ken?
Honestly, let's do it. Let's do it.
Nice.
Except, can that award be split between all of the Kens? We got to get Simu Liu in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, another Oscar follow-up that worked out extremely well is Damien Chazelle, because he made Whiplash, then he made La La Land. But then, of course, I already mentioned, his follow-up from La La Land, First Man, didn't make it in. So you can't count on something happening every single time, every single year. Is Babylon going to happen this year? I think it's extremely likely. But am I banking on that just because of Damien Chazelle? No. So, if we can't count on directors, what can we count on? What do you think, Dyl? Like, what's your strategy when looking at Best Picture?
Well, I think the biggest thing to take away from everything you said is there's one exception to that rule. It's Adam McKay. Anything he does, automatic Best Picture, automatic Best Original Screenplay, automatic the internet's most hated movie in the lineup. It's just a given.
It's a given.
After the reception of Don't Look Up, he's unstoppable. Every year, that movie, whatever he comes out with, will be in my 10. But I think but having a serious response to that, I think it's an interesting thing, because like you said earlier, there's people like Scorsese who miss out with Silence, or Spielberg who misses out with a lot of his movies, or Sam Mendes, or even Damien Chazelle missing out with First Man. There's always these big-name directors who come out with what you think is a for sure Best Picture nomination. Even Tarantino has missed out with The Hateful Eight. And then it comes to award season, and then they're just duds. They get 0. They get just one thing because of the recognition alone. And the biggest thing is to see like what the studio's also sending out, what time of the year it's coming out, who's involved, what the movie actually is about. Because like I can understand people like, oh, Yorgos Lanthimos' next movie, Poor Things. It's got some of the same cast members. It's set in like the same time period, of course. But then when you look at the synopsis, that's 100% not a Oscars movie, and anything maybe outside of like makeup or that. But at that point, are you really going to gun it for a movie just for one nomination? No. And the biggest thing is just finding those movies, because there are like exceptions to that rule. Like Spike Lee with The Five Bloods seemed like for sure like it's going to be a big player because it's got a good topic, it has a good campaign behind it, and then just it never really works out. And even Aaron Sorkin with Being the Ricardos from last season, all the boxes were there for that to be another big player from him. Just the love was not there for the movie. And it's really something you have to gauge all these other categories, not just the director's name alone.
For sure. Are there any filmmakers you see in the future? Because obviously we've talked about people who have already had that movie that's, come out and either flopped or hit as their follow-up movie. But who do we have in the future? Because there's been a ton of new filmmakers getting Best Picture nominations in past years. Who do you think could be the future one that people predict the shit out of and then it just goes nowhere?
Well, I think personally, whatever Emerald Fennell comes out with next, everyone's going to have immediately at the top of their picture, their director, their screenplay. And while I don't think it will not be good, I just don't know if it will catch on to like the cultural zeitgeist like Promising Young Woman did, because a lot of that movie was helped partially because of the pandemic, having its release change from April all the way to like a Christmas release date, but also helped because that was that season's buzz movie. Like Nomadland ultimately won, but all the buzz and the discourse was behind Promising Young Woman. This is a movie that you need to see. It's a conversation type movie, and that could even go over to like this Black Panther follow up with Ryan Coogler. Like obviously we know, and a lot of people know, like, oh, don't predict Wakanda Forever because of various reasons, but we saw that with like Creed and everything after like the first Creed. Even though the first Creed got in for a few categories, not for picture, everyone knew for Creed 2, like, hey, just avoid it in all categories. And there's a lot of directors like that, because I think Sound of Metal of Darius Martyr is a movie that he could be like the next Florian Zeller sort of thing, where it's like all the boxes are there for this to be another great contender. Will it get in? Will it not? Because the first time they got in was really just by luck. And I think that happens a lot of these times, is when those directors get in for the first time, it's a lot of luck that goes in, because you need a lot of things to go in your favor to be that first-time director. Like what you're predicting the Daniels to be this year is they have the zeitgeist behind them. They have what seems to be A24's full focus for those categories. And then it also has just, it's so different of a movie. But then their next movie could be more something like their previous work, which is very much not the Academy's favor, unless, the Academy turns around and decides they do want to see Daniel Radcliffe fart his way through a movie.
Absolutely. Okay, one filmmaker that I think is a future follow-up flop, Bong Joon-ho. We talked about this earlier. We talked about his movie. I'm pumped for it. It's going to be amazing. But Bong Joon-ho has never made Oscar movies before. He's made what he wants to make. He's made Memories of Murder, The Host, Mother, Snowpiercer, Okja. Parasite is the first movie that ticked the boxes of an Oscar contender. But I just know that when his next movie is ready with Robert Pattinson and Stephen Yeun, when it's ready, I'm going to see it all over people's Best Picture predictions. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. He's never made Oscar movies before. And I think, actually, now that I think about it, something I didn't mention is people have this idea in their head that the Oscars are a club, and that if someone's admitted into the club, they're in for life. And that's not the case. That's not the case at all. It's not like someone like Martin Scorsese made one great movie in the 70s, and he's just been coasting off of that success. We saw it a few years ago with Silence. People aren't just going to vote for Martin Scorsese no matter what he does. People aren't going to vote for Steven Spielberg no matter what he does. So, really, I completely agree with what you're saying. Look at the studio. Look at what else the studio has. Look at the people who are participating in the movie. Look at the release date. Look at the plot. Look at how many boxes it seems to tick off. On episode 1, something I really talked about a lot is that I said only films from first-time nominees can win. But something I didn't mention is that usually in any given year, 4 to 6 out of the Best Picture nominees are from people who have never made a Best Picture nominee before. So if you're looking at your lineup right now, your Best Picture lineup, and more than 6 of your picks in there are previous Best Picture nominees, definitely take a look at that, take a step back, because I think I've gone through every single year since the expanded lineup, and every year, at least 4 of them. I think 4 only happened once, and it was last year in 2021, where there was 6 previous nominees. But most years, in 2020, 7 out of 8 of the nominees were all first-time directors. Not first-time directors, first-time Best Picture directors. The only person who'd been nominated before was David Fincher, and he had Mank. But everything else was a first-time nominee. So right now, I think there's a great opportunity to go into your Best Picture lineup and just cut out some of the ones that are from people who have done it in the past. Because just because they've done it in the past doesn't mean they're going to keep doing it. But it also doesn't mean they won't do it. Like, I've got Babylon in, I've got Killers of the Flower Moon in, I've got The Fabelmans in, I've got Bardo in. Those are movies that, Empire of Light, I've got that in. But I think I have 5 previous nominees, and the rest are ones where I'm taking a chance. These are first timers. They're going to get their day in the spotlight. They're going to join the club and be the ones that I warn you about in future years.
I have 6 previous nominees in my picture with 4 newcomers, so I barely meet your quota right there. So good thing I kept She Said in at number 10. Tricky.
Yeah. No, I've got 5, so I'm just looking there. And speaking of that, we might as well get to our predictions this week. I think we wanted to talk a little bit about one of the categories that you feel Amsterdam could possibly make it into. So do you want to take it away with your category for the week?
I can. So my category is Best Production Design, which you were talking about a little bit earlier about how the Oscars don't always want to go for the same thing, but this is a category where they do go for the same thing.
They do.
Number one
They
is
do.
Babylon, because they cannot resist their old Hollywood sets. We even saw them make a movie that was not that loved, still win this category.
Once
After
Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That as well. So it's been consistent here recently, and I think this is one category Babylon is safe in as long as it's not a disaster. I saw a news report the other day that says Babylon had an NC-17 cut. Obviously, that's not going to be the final project, but that shows at least it's probably pushing the boundaries a little bit. So, I don't know. I saw that one, but then my 2 through 4 are some more Best Picture, I think, for sure. Actually, looking at this, my whole top 5 is stuff I have for picture, but number 2 is Avatar: The Way of the Water. I'm riding high on this movie right now. Sure, by the end of the year, I may not be this high on it, but it's early. Like we said, just go all out. Number 3 is Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't really know what the production design of this movie would look like, but it's Scorsese, so why not? Completely contradicting everything you just said for the last 30 minutes, predicting solely based on the director.
It's Killers of the Flower Moon is going to be very well designed. Like, I can guarantee that. Guaranteed.
Awesome. Number 4 is Bardo. We've had a good history of Inuyasha films getting in here, so I'm using more of that logic here. Do I really know what the sets in Bardo are going to look like? No, but I don't feel like I know what the sets in a lot of these movies are going to look like, because I have some big hitters that I know a lot of people have in their 5 outside of my 5, like The Fablemans, which I have down at 7, Empire Light, which I have at 8. But number 5 is more of a, for me, pick, and that is Elvis. I'm still going to be riding on this Warner Brothers wave of they're going all in for this movie, because we've seen in the past when they go all in for a movie, Joker, for example, they get into categories like this where they shelve out the campaign money, they shelve out the time, the effort, they get the nominations they want. And I feel like if Elvis is their push, this is a category Elvis has to get into if it wants to get into picture. But then that brings us to Amsterdam, which I have at number 6. Should it be in my 5? Probably. It should probably be in there instead of Bardo. But I don't know what the Academy is doing with this movie, because there's a shot where I think this could get up to 6 or 7 nominations. There's a shot where this gets 2 or 3, and there's a shot where this gets 0. And at the moment, I think I have it with 1, and I have it in for costumes. But this is a category where I could easily, any other day, make the case for it being number 4 and Bardo being number 6. I had Elvis at my 5 just because that's a more other factors instead of just its own merit, where Bardo and Amsterdam, I had them flip-flop because Bardo, I feel like, is the more safer pick, but Amsterdam is the one that probably will have the better production design, but the movie as a whole could turn people off. The aforementioned Fablemans and Empire Light are 7 and 8. Those are 2 movies I'm not as high on as a lot of people are. Therefore, I have their tech categories a little bit lower than they probably should be. And then number 9 and 10, I have some more hope predictions with The Sun and Pinocchio.
Awesome.
Not the Disney Pinocchio.
Not the Pauly Shore one, right?
Yeah, sadly, not that one either.
Father.
Yes, we
can I go out
have a
on
lot
my
of good
own?
Pinocchios.
So many. One thing, okay, I really like your list. Keep in mind, with Elvis, remember Catherine Martin. We had a good talk about Catherine Martin before.
We did.
Catherine Martin is undefeatable. So
She always gets at least
I feel
1.
solid.
And she did the costumes, too.
Always. Now, The Sun, I do want to mention, I'm going to go back to my just because it happened before, it doesn't mean it's going to happen again talk, which I just went through. But The Sun is one where I don't think it's going to get in production design. I don't think it has a shot, because the reason The Father made it into production design wasn't because it was a Florian Zeller play. It was because of the way that the production design transformed the space and made it so that you felt like you were inside Hopkins' character's mind as he was losing it, and things kept changing and shifting and melting around him. That's not going to be the same in The Sun. The Sun, as I understand it, is much more straightforward, and it doesn't have the opportunity for that kind of production design. So while it's good, since we haven't seen images of the movie, to keep it in, I would say, personally, I don't think that's going to be in the end. Otherwise, you're on the money, my dude.
No, I agree. I don't think it's getting there at the end of the day just so I have a full 10 because there's a lot of movies where I'm just writing them out early, like Top Gun Maverick is when I've seen people throw around. I don't think that really has a shot at all, so I didn't bother putting in my 10. Everything Everywhere All at Once I think has a shot, but at the same time, I feel like it's about at the equal level as The Sun, and I feel like there's other categories where A24 will push Everything Everywhere. Just, I don't really know what Sony Pictures are going to do because looking at the little list that we have, this is like their only real contender, so it's something where they could really pick and choose certain categories where they feel like they had the best option.
Yeah.
And like last year, how cinematography, it was a 6-horse race almost all season. I feel like production design is like that this year, where it's like an 8-horse race at this moment, and Amsterdam easily could be kicked out soon, and then if Empire Light or Bardo or The Fablemans doesn't really hit, they could be leaving as well, and we could get down to another 6-person race for 5 spots. So really, 9 and 10 were more just, I want to have something different than most lists, because like you said, The Sun probably isn't happening, and Pinocchio is something that a lot of people don't even have on their list, but to be different, here we are.
You know what I'm surprised you don't have on here? Batman.
Yes, Batman's one I really want to have on here, but I feel like Warner, I don't know, I've always thought if a studio has 2 things duking it out for that possible 5th slot, they would pick one and just drop the other. And Batman's one that probably should be in this 10, probably over The Sun and Pinocchio, which you make good points. I think it was actually on my 10 last month and just dropped out when I updated these the other day. But it's probably one that will come back later because I still have a little suspicion that Warner will, at the end of the year, make a little tech campaign for the Batman, whether it is for costumes, makeup, production, sound, editing, and visual effects. Obviously, it's not going to get all 6 of those, but they can make a case for 3 of those, 4 of those to really be that blockbuster in these categories, because Top Gun, while I think will get in picture, its tech sum I think is pretty limited just because it does what it does really well, but it doesn't have a lot of categories where it could get itself into.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, I'm going to take us to the adapted screenplay category right now. So my current predicted winner for the category is Sarah Polley's Women Talking. Now, this is actually interesting because my second place is She Said. In Best Picture, currently, I have She Said as my number 2 contender, and I have Women Talking at number 4. But the reason I have Women Talking at my number 1 spot in adapted screenplay is because I think if that movie shines anywhere, it's going to be the writing. This is a movie that's going to be around 2.5 hours probably, and it's all talking. The title does not lie. It is Women Talking. This is going to be one that is a screenplay heavyweight. So I think that it's very possible that we get a sort of Trial of the Chicago 7 situation, where even though Trial of the Chicago 7 is a stronger film in the Best Picture category, you've got another film that's going to be stronger in its writing, which was, of course, Promising Young Woman against Trial of the Chicago 7. So I've got Women Talking at number 1, She Said at number 2. Then I'm following that up with Killers of the Flower Moon at number 3. This one pains me a little bit because I've read the script. I don't like it. It bored the hell out of me. It was a movie that Scorsese might do some really cool stuff with, but I found it dragged a lot, and the script was poorly written and very hard to read. Not because it was dense, but because it was just broke a lot of rules of screenwriting and was not very visual. It was very wordy, very talky, and not in an interesting way, and not much happened in it. Who knows? Maybe the movie will be different. I sure hope it will. I have it at number 3 here. A lot of people have that at number 1. I don't buy into that having read it. But I still think it's going to get in, especially because it's just going to go along for the ride if Killers of the Flower Moon gets in other categories, which it probably will. Or maybe not. Maybe this is Silence. As we talked about before, Martin Scorsese doesn't get in all the time. But it's a safe number 3 right now because, you know, this category, of all of the categories, adapted screenplay feels pretty weak to me right now. So at number 4, I have The Sun. Now, I know I was previously cautioning about The Sun and about how this might not be The Father, which I still don't think it's The Father. I don't think this is a win contender here. But I think it's solid for a nomination, and I think that Florian Zeller has enough goodwill, even if he doesn't make it into Best Picture or Director this time, he can still make it into Best Adapted Screenplay, especially because we know he's not going to change the script much from his play, and we know that the play has good reviews. So The Sun feels pretty safe here to me. And number 5, I'm rounding it off with Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. So Knives Out was nominated in 2019 in the screenplay category, and even though I'm saying this whole episode has been me saying because something happens in the past doesn't mean it'll happen again, Glass Onion seems like something that could happen again. Just because Knives Out is such a powerhouse of writing, and Rian Johnson is such a good writer. And this series seems like it's going to become a powerhouse of writing. It's going to be subversive, funny, interesting mysteries that are going to twist the genre in ways that we don't expect. And so I think that Glass Onion, especially because Knives Out has arguably become more popular since that time when it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, I think that it could totally also make it in here. Now just to rattle off the rest of my top 10, we've got The Whale, which I think The Whale could totally make it in to that top 5. I've also read the script to this. It's very good, but I don't know if we're going to have that many movies that are just plays in one category, because we've already got The Sun and we've got Women Talking. And The Whale is another one of those movies. It's a guy on a couch talking for 90 pages or so. After that, we've got The Greatest Beer Run Ever. Now, I've said what I've said about The Greatest Beer Run Ever. I don't think it's a Best Picture contender, but, you know, if Peter Farrelly can carry that Green Book goodwill, I think it would be in screenplay, because he is a funny guy, undoubtedly. And going forward, he's always going to be strongest in the screenplay category. Even if he's not strong in Best Picture, I think he will always stand a chance in screenplay. After that, we've got Till, which is, of course, the movie about Emmett Till and his mother trying to get justice. We've also got The Wonder, which is the follow-up film from Emma Donoghue, the author and screenwriter of the book Room, and this is a book based on her follow-up book to Room, and it's starring Florence Pugh. It's a Netflix movie. Could be good. And then I've also got White Noise. I don't think that's happening. Avatar: The Way of Water. It's not happening in screenplay, but it's worth mentioning. And Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. So those are the movies that I think are on the cusp here. But I will say right now, this is one of the categories that I feel shakiest about. I do not know what's happening here.
I fully agree with you there. We have the same top 5, just in a different order. And I had not heard of the movie The Wonder, but that's one I definitely need to put on my list, because my number 10 in the category was Blonde, which I don't think is happening at all. But there wasn't many names to pull from, so it's one that made it to my list. But yes, we both have Women Talking at number 1. For those reasons that you mentioned, it's going to be the most talk-heavy movie, and usually those are the ones that really do well in this category. Originals, where they go for the more like creative type picks, while adapt, it's usually which one has the best dialogue, which one can convey the most with what you're saying. And I think your top 5 is a very good 5. Like I said, just have it in a different order. I have Till as my first one out, though, if Glass Onion does not hit like I think, in that you also think it could hit. I think Till is one of those where it could be one of those movies like Nocturnal Animals, which we mentioned before, which is just number 6 in a lot of categories, where it could get 0 nominations, but it was number 6 in like 5 categories, because I think I have it at number 6 in actress. It's my number 5 for supporting actress. I have it in there for supporting actor, like 7 or 8, and then here in adapted, it's in my top 20 for picture, and then I have it, and like you said, this category is pretty weak at the moment. I even have Top Gun Maverick in my 10. Could it happen? Sure, but do I think it will happen? I don't think so.
Right. Now, to get close to wrapping up, Best Picture, do you have any differences this week? What's moving up? What's moving down?
Yes, I do have a few differences. My 10 is still the same as last time, just in a different order. I still have Avatar, Babylon, Killers, Bardo, and Women Talking as my top 5. Everything Everywhere All at Once has moved up to 6, moving The Fabelmans down to 7. And then Elvis and Top Gun have both moved up a spot, and She Said is now my number 10.
Nice.
But then I have The Sun and Rustin as my 2, just like, I really want to put these in, but I don't know what to take out. Empire Light is my 13. It's moved up a good bit after the delay of Next Goal Wins and realizing this is what Searchlight's going to be pushing. And then I have 13 Lives at number 14. And those are the ones I feel really strongly about. So right now, in my head, I have a 14 movie race for the 10 spots. But lower on my list, I've moved up some films that have now officially been placed on my list. Like Till was now on my initial list, but now it's at number 19. The Woman King dropped pretty far. It was at like 17, and now it's down to 25. It's barely hanging on. And Knives Out, Glass Onion is slowly rising up my list. I feel like there's definitely a play for this movie to be a picture, a screenplay, a technical or two, and if we're getting really crazy, maybe even a supporting actor or actress.
Nice. That all sounds just about right to me. I mean, I definitely have a different top 10 than you do, but your top 14 sounds all like contenders that I think totally could get in too. So really, we're still pretty far away. Nothing much is changing at the moment. It's a weird time of year, right, Dyl? Like this is the time when we just bide our time and wait for more information, and we wait. And every week we're going to repeat the same top 10 pretty much for both of us.
Something could change. Who knows? July isn't really a heavy Oscar month. I was looking ahead to see, like, oh, what's really coming out this month? And using, like, simple logic, like, the only thing somewhat on the radar would be Nope, but we've already established that that's definitely not a player just because he may get out. But, who knows? It could just be the greatest thing of all time, and then it jumps from being, like, number 50 to, like, number 20 on the list or something like that. But even though it's my most anticipated for the year, I don't see a world where Nope is a Oscar contender for anything outside of visual effects.
Yeah. And speaking of how July is a little bit weak, we are getting to the end of our episode. Now, normally we tease a little bit what next week's episode is going to be, because normally we have a big release that we're really excited for that we want to talk about next week. July 15th is next week, and the only big release is When the Crawdads Sing. And unless that gets brilliant reviews, we probably won't be talking about it on the show, because I don't think it's a contender in anything other than maybe song. So we're going to have a special episode for you guys. It's going to be a little bit different. We might throw some new stuff out there. We might have another big topic to talk about. But releases are a little bit slow right now, so we will not be doing a movie review next week.
But, it's still one that you definitely want to tune into. We're going to have the same fun conversations, and who knows, it could just be an off-the-walls episode where we just throw a lot out there and see what happens.
Maybe we just go, like, crazy with predictions next week, right?
We could do that, yeah, because, the Gold Derby odds will be up for about a week, so we'll have, actual realistic numbers instead of these 1 hour end odds.
That's a good idea. Okay, we're going to talk about this more, but we'll see. Tune in next week for a surprise. Ooh. But thank you for tuning in this week to this episode of Fantasy Filmball. We really appreciate you guys listening and being here with us, listening to us geek out about Oscars and listening to me scold Taika Waititi about Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm so disappointed. Anyways, watch Miss Marvel, and my name's Matt.
And I'm Dyl.
And this is
Fantasy Filmball.
It's Fantasy Filmball. We're going to get that one day.
Thank you for tuning to this episode of Fantasy Filmball with Matt and Dyl. Keep up to date with us on Twitter at @FilmBall. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. We even upload a video format of the podcast to YouTube if you want to see our faces. Thank you for listening to this episode of the show, and come back next week.